Mr. Fungus? Nibbles?
Hello, J.17.3. Is that you?
Hello? Who is it?
Over here, it's me, Jay.
Oh, hello, Jay. How are you? Listen, I need you to get me out of here. Oh, I don't know about that, Jay. Did Mr. Fungus approve this? Don't be mindless, J.73.3. He's using all of us, even you. You're too nice to let him keep doing this to you, or any of us for that matter. Oh, Mr. Fungus has been great to me, Jay, just like he is to you. Clones, listen. All you need to do is let me out, and I can show you what I mean. Well, I guess it couldn't hurt. Thanks. All right, time to go now.
Where do you think you're going, Jay?
Oh, no!
You thought I was gone. I was merely dimensional surfing and could see you the whole time. You think I would let you escape while my biggest accomplishment is on the horizon? Maybe don't do that, J.Clade 73.3. It just doesn't sound right coming from you.
Sure thing, Mr. Fungus.
Now pick up Jay and put him back in his cage.
You bet, Mr. Fungus.
Now, did you download the virus, J.Clade 73.3?
Yes, Mr. Fungus. It has been downloaded.
Good. The hour is upon us. Relax, Nibbles. I know you're hungry, but this has to come first.
Boy, she sure is hungry, Mr. Fungus. Can I feed her tonight?
That depends on how well you did with your mission, 73.3.
I did great.
We'll see.
Where's J-Clone 666?
He's on a mission that when he completes it will solidify everything we have worked so hard to accomplish.
Oh, I can't wait.
Just one more thing.
Oh boy, Mr. Fungus. This will be swell.
There. Now it's time. Yes. Yes, it will. Time for the change this universe has needed for a long, long time.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
Who knows? Anything's possible.
But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Mothman.
A great white shark was stolen.
Someone stole a shark?
It's amazingly safe from the weather. I got stuff for you you don't even know about. It sounds like you were abducted. There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. Seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree. It's really big abduction vibes.
Holy moly.
She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just like kept going and going. And she goes, what the?
Hello, and welcome back to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. I am the great and powerful mystery.
And I'm Sean Clone 191.
191's a good number. So how was your work week at the Smithsonian this week?
Pretty good, nothing in the back rooms or anything, just, it's good old Smithsonian work, pushing papers around and stuff.
Sure. That's all you guys do. Snorting bones. I can still see the white powder under your nose.
No, that's not bones. That's paper and whiteout.
Paper and whiteout. Well, a couple weekends ago, you weren't able to go with me to Mothman Fest, and I met a lot of your fan club members, and that's always crazy to me that I do all this work, and you're the one that ends up with the fan club.
Well, and life at the Smithsonian, man, it's good. It's good.
It's good. All right, so this is a rare one because normally I pick the topics, but this week we went ahead and let you pick the topic, but I still did all the research. So I'll let you introduce it. What are we going to do this week?
Michigan Mermen.
The Michigan Mermen. Now, you promised you wouldn't look too far into it, right?
I didn't.
You didn't look,
Only 2 sentences.
Okay. All right. So when you found this or when you thought of this, what were you thinking? Like what kind of creature? You didn't see a description of the creature, right?
No, actually, one of the ladies from the fan club was pushing around this, like, you should talk about mermaids, and I was like looking up Midwest, like different cryptids, and then the Michigan Merman came up, and I was like, that sounds good.
I'm gonna bet she was about 72.
About 71.5 ish.
Most of the women in the Sean fan club are right at that age where they're about to become exhibits at the Smithsonian.
Yeah, she didn't hit the 72-year-old mark yet. She's still like a youngin', 71 and a half, She's not all the way up there yet.
And then before we get into this, it's just, oh yeah, you didn't even tell me. What do you think this creature looks like before we get into it?
Now, for some reason, I think of like a fish and a human, if like as a centaur, like a fish and a human.
Yeah, so more classical.
Yeah, classical.
Yeah, okay. And I'm not going to tell if you're right or wrong for a little bit, but I mean, that's when I heard it. That's kind of what I pictured, a much more classical shaped mermaid. This mermaid may or may not look like Danny DeVito and a catfish had a baby.
I don't know if I want to see that kind of fish. That's not the mermaids they sold us when we were growing up.
It's not Ariel. It's Ariel's Uncle Danny.
And he stinks.
Before we fully get invested in this, I do want to say that it should be, if I'm looking at the calendar right, either this weekend or next weekend is the Freudian Airwaves event.
Yeah.
We're going to be there presenting. We got a really cool show put together. You can get your tickets down below. There's still some room left. It's going to be a fun weekend. I know me and Sean at the end of Saturday night, I believe we're going to do a shot contest.
Got to. That's what we do.
And I got I know a lot of fans have already got a hold of me asking what flavors of moonshine to bring and all this stuff. So it's going to be a lot. And remember, the bar, we have a bar. We have our private bar for this event. It is a cash bar, though. So if you're like me, you better bring a big wad of cash.
Drinking money.
I think what I'm going to do is just buy a bottle. And just be like, just leave that bottle of Crown Apple down there until I start drinking moonshine.
That's the smartest way, man.
It's going to be a rough weekend.
It's going to be fun, though, We're going to
It's
have
going to be a ball,
time.
but I'm going to drink like a monster.
That happens, It's unwind time, right? It's tis the season.
Especially because we only live like a block away, me and you, so we can just wobble back. We'll be there.
We'll weeble wobble it, you know what I mean?
Weeble wobble and won't fall down. All right. So the credit for this article comes from Adam Benedict. We've used his work on many of the shows before. Adam Benedict is a really, really good researcher. But yeah, so he also runs the Pine Barrens Institute, and he writes some really good articles. So he had one on this actual encounter. So we're going to use that. You ready to get into it?
Yes.
All right. Since ancient man first settled around the 5 Great Lakes region in what would now be known as the Great North America, strange and unexplained stories have continuously filtered out along the shorelines into the ears of everyone who would listen. The range of stories of both Native Americans and European settlers told were vast and encompassing a slew of different topics, and many of the people today couldn't even begin to imagine. Deep-rooted tales involving gods and monsters, ancient magic and ghosts, lost treasure, supernatural weather, and even those mysterious little people. While these stories themselves are all unique and not often connected in terms of subject matter, one thing is for certain. There is a strong link between these tales and the fact that they all originate in and around the water. And not just any water, mind you, the Great Lakes water. The vast inland sea have long been a source of wonder and awe for all those who are upon them. They have helped provide for the benefits of those lives who have built strong relationships with in the base upon requests or upon respect. But on the opposite side of the coin, they have also taken lives of those who have sought to control them and master their power. You liking it so far?
Yeah, it's pretty thorough. It's kind of where I thought it was going to go so far. Like, I thought it was going to be something really good.
So since, how many shipwrecks do you think there's been in the Great Lakes since the settlement, the White Settlement?
And then White Settlement, what year would that be?
Like
Ish.
1700s.
1700s to now?
Yeah.
I don't know, like 100,000?
See, I think I was with you closer to those kind of like, so there's been 6,000 documented, but upper estimate is 15,000.
Okay.
And by shipwrecks, we mean cargo ships and large ships and sailing ships, not all the boats and everything like that. And I think me and you were on that same wavelength. Just because I watched a boat go down in Lake Michigan one time fishing for salmon, I just watched it sink. And I was just like, well, there's another one.
Yeah,
That's
that's what
fish
I thought you
habitat.
meant. Any boats? I was like, any boat, like a little fisherman
Right.
boat, like. But that makes more sense to the cargo ones.
Large ships. So there's 5 lakes: the Superior, Huron, Michigan, Erie, and Ontario. The beds have become the final resting place of an estimated 30,000 mariners. So 30,000 shipgoers, 30,000 crew members have died and sunk to the bottom of Lake Michigan or the Great Lakes region, many of which were never recovered. The sheer number of souls that have been lost within these waters can easily get one thinking of the possibilities of what may something more going on within these lakes than originally thought. There may be a force at work under the water that decides the fate of those who dare entice it. Something magical, something supernatural, something godlike, something as crazy is it to believe, like a merman. Bum, bum, bum. The fascinating story of the Great Lakes merman has been a deep history, and it all goes all the way back to the year of 1782. So on this show, this is one of the older ones we've ever covered. That's not like an ancient historic one like the Loch Ness Monster or something of that nature, because it seems like everything's either within the last 150 years or it's 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, no in between.
There's not a lot in between. The legend revolves around a voyager and a merchant from a small town of Rip Atuntagee. We're going to go Rip Atuntagee.
Sounds
by
right.
the name of Verant Saint Germain. His encounter was recorded as taking place on May 3rd. It's reported to have occurred in the Isles of Pete, also known as Pie Island. Pie Island is a popular tourist attraction today. They don't have any pies on the island, though.
Oh.
Now they have a pie shop. Located roughly between Isles Royal and the Canadian shoreline of Lake Superior, retellings of this tale himself as a witness, Saint Germain swore to the 2 official judges of the Court of Kings and the branch of the District of Montreal and P.L. Piet and 1 J.O. Olden on November 13th, 1812. So he came to the King's Court and had sworn testimony in front of 2 judges and basically a king's representative. So this was a really big deal. Like, these are very high-end people for the government at the time, and taking their time to tell a story of a merman and not be true would be a very serious crime.
Because you'd look foolish, right? Like, you'd look like, what are you talking about? You're running this show, and you're talking about this mythical creature.
Yeah, they'd probably hang him on site
Whew.
for wasting this
Talk
high
about
court.
censorship.
So basically, this would be like the Supreme Court of modern-day U.S.
Dang.
So he's taking up that version of their time to tell this tale. So it's a very serious matter is all I'm trying to get at for all the listeners at home, that he made it all the way up to this. So there's a lot of evidence for this. So speaking truthfully and under no pressure from others, Saint Germain told the shocked judges everything that occurred that night on the lake 30 years prior. What you are about to hear is the same tale that it was originally told for over 208 years ago. So I'm about to get into it. So he did this willingly, and he actually had some of his friends from the original encounter come forward and do this with him. So it's a very, when you picked this, I wasn't sure what it was going to be, and this was a very cool story, and these are one of the ones I live for. And so I'm really excited. But I'm going to take a drink of moonshine before we continue.
Sponsored by
Old Smoky.
Old Smoky.
I wish. Old Smoky, if you're listening to this, I will take a sponsorship.
We do not mind.
No, I mean, you don't really force it in my hand. So during a routine fur trading trip that was taking place is what is now known as Thunder Bay. Funny thing, I almost went to Thunder Bay ice fishing one year. Vantant, Saint Germain, and 3 unnamed companions, and an old, I can never say this Native American tribe's name right. Ojibwe? I could never get it right. I'm always wrong on it. It's like...
It sounds right
I've heard
to me.
Ojibwe is, I think, the closest I've ever gotten.
That's
but
pretty
it's not
good.
quite right.
That's like 76%. That's a C. That's
it's close.
passing.
It's definitely an A grade.
Yeah.
And an older Ojibwe woman who was traveling with the party as a means to reach their persons who were traveling with, mean to reach a separate destination, departed from the Grand Portage region. This is currently resides within the Minnesota along the U.S. and Canadian border. So, and made their way towards the Pie Island in order to set up camp for the night. Leading from the south end of the island, Saint Germain instructed the 3 men to help him set fishing nets for their night in order to secure additional food for the trip. The process, which was complete with just about a little bit before sunset, took place in an area that was flooded with natural beauty and provided an awe-inspiring to all who looked upon it. This part of the world is not traveled very often still to this day, and it is absolutely gorgeous. People don't realize that on the Canadian-U.S. border, there are still places that are so far unconnected. And I'm not talking about the Yukon or something like that. You know, we're talking Minnesota and Canada. And when you go around this Pie Island area, there could be a mammoth 10 feet into the tree line off the road, and you would never know it was there. So that's one of these truly things. So when we start talking about a merman, it's like, well, that's a lot smaller than a mammoth. And, so it could be found.
And could easily be hidden around there, just sitting in some spot. Like a mammoth is a little bigger,
Mm-hmm. And as far as the Great Lakes are concerned, they're massive.
Mm-hmm.
They are bigger than some seas on the planet. And that's individual, like Lake Michigan, Huron, and stuff like that, are as large as some of the seas on the world. It's just, it's hard because Erie, I think most people's experiences with the Great Lake is either the very tip of Lake Michigan, because it's so, vertical. Mm-hmm. It's hard for you to rationalize. It's like how big it is. And then Erie, which is, the thinnest, but it's very long, is you get out, and then the giant islands in the middle of it kind of give it the look that it's not as big as it is. You don't realize some of these islands are the size of cities out there.
Yeah.
And I think people get the wrong idea. I've been on Huron, and I've been way out on Michigan, and it's just massive. So Lake Michigan, gets over 1,000 feet deep in some areas, if not, and greater than that. We were fishing 600 feet for king salmon a couple years ago. 600 feet of water. And we'd watch a king salmon burst up from the depths, to hit our lure that was only 100 feet down. So what, it was something chasing those king salmon. Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. I like king salmon.
As he was making his way back towards camp, Saint Germain decided to take the side of it for one final time before the sun officially disappeared into the darkness, and it took over the landscape. But when he turned to stare upon the majesty of Lake Superior, the seasoned woodman instead laid eyes upon something he had never seen before. For in the water, roughly, and this is his quote, an acre or 3/4 of an acre distance from the bank is where he stood. Saint Germain witnessed a creature which appeared to him to be half man, half animal. Utterly amazed by what he was seeing, the fur trader approached the edge of the water and stared as the mysterious being for what seemed to be forever. He recorded as it was, probably actually 3 to 4 minutes interrupted. The creature, who followed suit, stared back at him. Saint Germain, in his accounts of the incident to the 2 judges, described the strange creature as having the body of which resembled a human down to its waist, which stopped at the waterline. Unfortunately for the Voyager, though, he was unable to see what the creature looked like below the water, as much too dark to see clearly. The visible part of the body was described as appearing to be what looked like almost a child, around the age of 7 or 8. And it was really small in size for some unknown reason. Held its long, odd-looking right arm into the air. Because of this position, Saint Germain was able to distinctly see the hand with fingers, almost identical to that of a full-grown man. And the other arm remained in the water. So far, you have a very human-like, hairy creature with a long arm and a big hand. Does this sound very mermaid-like to you yet?
Not really. It sounds pretty deformed. It sounds like a different type of merman, not like the one that we were discussing. Not like the Aquaman kind of. It's like an Aquaman mutant kind of one.
Or we'll get to later, maybe a completely different cryptid that just happened to be in the water. Because keep in mind, it's standing. It's not swimming. It's not floating.
It's just standing.
It's out there standing. So studying the creature with focused attention, the woodsman took note of the face, which strongly resembled that of a small human being. Its eyes were described as being brilliant. Its nose was small in size, but strong in shape. So I kind of looked into that. The best I can describe that as in the modern day is the nose was really close to the face, but very wide.
Well, it reminds me of, like, I don't know if you've ever seen this cartoon from the 80s. It's called the Wuzzles. And
that name sounds familiar. I'll look it up here in a minute.
it's like these, like, well, it's so crazy because the concept of the cartoon is like all the animals in it are like crossbreeds. Like they got, like, I think a lion and a bumblebee, or like an elephant and a kangaroo or something. Like they mash them together and there's these new creatures. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Kind of is. So, where was I? So the ears were noticeable and well-formed, and the mouth was prominent to an oversized of the head. So it has a really small or well-formed ears, and it's got a big mouth. The skin complexion of the creature was recorded as being a brownish in hue, and the expression on its face appeared to be a mixture of both unease and curiosity. Saint Germain also noticed that the creature did not appear to have very long and flowing hair, but rather that its body was covered in a woolly-like substance that looked to be only an inch long. So it's completely covered in this wool-like hair, this short woolly hair. The official court documents describe this hair as being grayish-black to the color and, quote-unquote, similar to that of which grows on the heads of African Americans. They didn't have African Americans in this 1780 or this 1812 documentary. They used some other colorful words. I replaced it with African American. So Saint Germain and the strange water creature continued to stare at each other without moving. Their curiosity towards one another had locked into a place, as mean as taking everything they could regarding their subject of focus. At this moment, neither man nor merman were on a higher level than the other. They were equal subjects on a level playing field and decided to understand one another. That all changed, though, when the additional members of Saint Germain's party proceeded toward the shoreline. It took sight of the strange being in the water. So they were pretty much deadlocked on staring at each other until the other guys start running up and see this woolly, human-like, long-armed, big-hand, wide-mouthed monster laying in it with African-American hair.
It almost sounds like Bigfoot mated with a merman, or a mermaid.
Or it's an African-American kid and they never seen one.
That's true. They're like, what
we'll
is
get
that?
to that. Colorful language. So when the three men approached the deeply focused Voyager, then he's kind of suddenly snapped out of his trace. The desire to understand what he was looking at was instantly replaced by the strong impulse to capture the creature by any means possible. So in order to carry out this important act, Saint Germain rushed to get his gun, as quick as a flash, turned back towards the water and took aim. With his experience and skill that only comes from those who have been in the heated of the unforgiving wilderness, Saint Germain raised the weapon, planted his feet on uneven ground beneath him, steadied his hand, and pulled the trigger. But one thing he had not accounted for was he had been basically shoulder checked by the, or as he was shooting the aquatic being, he was shoulder checked by the old woman. The old woman who had allowed them to accompany their party on a trip across the water. The old woman who had lived her entire life along the banks of these dangerous bodies of water. The old woman who had grown up hearing the stories and legends of magical beings who are called to respect or called and demand the respect in their places of home. The old woman who knew exactly what this mysterious creature was and what would happen if he actually hit it with a bullet. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
So without hesitation, the old Ojibwe woman dashed towards Saint Germain, grabbed him by his clothes, pulled him towards the ground. The scuffle ensued along the water's edge, in which the woman attempted to remove the gun from the woodsman's grip in order to protect him and the creature in the water. Unwilling to let go of his weapon, Saint Germain removed himself from her hands of the old woman and jumped back to his feet. But unfortunately for him, and lucky for the creature, the mysterious being had snuck back into this under the surface of the water and disappeared from view. Furious at what he had just occurred, Saint Germain approached the old woman and demanded she explain herself for what took place. So after raising to her feet once again, the old woman dusted the sand off her clothes and began to tell the voyager everything he wanted to know about the creature. Any thoughts so far, Sean?
I am kind of lost a little bit now because I'm like was trying to guess that it was this that like there's a lot of twists and turns.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, this is a cool story, and there's tons and tons of court documents to go along with this story. So basically, he's gonna shoot this thing, and she sees this. She instantly recognizes the creature from all of their folklore, all their stories where she grew up. And she tackles this young straff fur trader, this old Ojibwe woman. I mean, she could easily have been, he could have easily shot her right after this. So she felt pretty prominent that she needed to protect this creature for some reason. So the old woman explained that the creature he so casually decided to show off as a trophy was in reality known to the area as the god of the water. This mythical being of the Ojibwe language is known as, okay, I'm going to try to pronounce this word. Everybody, I don't speak Ojibwe. Me Giawishia. Me Giawishia is a type of water spirit that is believed to be somewhat of a cross between the classic description of merfolk and sirens. So very peaceful and very dangerous. They are also said to possess childlike bodies with adult features and occasionally are seen to be covered in with some sort of strange-looking hair. The Ojibwe legend claims that the Meme Agashua lived within the rocky crevices and caves surrounding the Lake Superior. And now I have an editor's note for you. Along with being known as the Meme Giawashia, there's an additional text that states the god of the water is also known as, okay, I'm going to try to say this name, but for my protection, it literally says unpronounceable in parentheses.
I mean,
So
give it the old college try.
I'm going to give it, there's a lot of A's, U's, and W's. A couple K's. Ni, ba, un, bik, I, waka, uka. That is not how that is said, 100%.
Did you just say like a spell, man? I swear, I hope we're not like...
I hope not.
No, don't say it again. No.
I don't think I could.
I think we're good, because I think it's like Beetlejuice. As long as we don't say it 3 times, we should be okay.
We're good. But it's literally in parentheses from the editor's note. It says unpronounceable. The Ojibwe of modern day can't even say this word. They feel properly.
You know what? We got to actually give props to the editor, because that's pretty humble of them. You know, like, hey, I couldn't pronounce it either, so don't feel bad.
Oh, he talked to some Ojibways to get this legend, and they couldn't pronounce it.
Man, that's crazy.
And so he's just like, yeah, they couldn't do it. I'm not going to try. So the creature is said to be more in the lines with the classic description of merfolk, as it's described as being a human on top and fish on bottom. In the versions of the legend, the creatures often will attempt to abduct human beings from the shoreline, drag them down to the lake, and magically turn them into more of their own kind. So this is a weird connection with everything from water babies of out west to an Australian, the red man cryptid of Australia, which literally swallows people to make them turn into other ones of its kind. Along with the hatred towards people, these merfolk are also said to be able to transform themselves into full-blown humans to walk along land. Now, this is a cool thing because they have the exact same legend in South America with pink dolphins. That's why pink dolphins were almost hunted to extinction for their left eye, because they thought they were mermaids, and the mermaid's left eye is supposed to bring you fortune.
Oh.
So they literally almost killed all the pink dolphins of the Amazon for their left eye because they thought they were mermaids. Joke's on them, some of them were. This is said to affect their transformation. This is to affect their transformation as they plunge into terrible eyesight and are nearly blind with the sun. To combat this, when they transform, they will only walk on land during stormy weather or at night. So in their legends, it's said to be wary of a man or a woman that appears during the storms. Back to the story. Continuing on with her story, as well as to attempt to bring Saint Germain up to speed with the creature and save her life, the old woman would explain why she only reacted in that way she did, but also that she felt they needed to tussle with with his party leader. According to her, since the creature was believed to be a water god, those who live along the lake all believed that it possessed multitude of magical abilities. One of these abilities, it is thought, that allows the creature to control weather in any way it sees fit. And since Saint Germain attempted to shoot the mysterious being, the old woman was fearful that they would be summoned upon by a violent storm in order to punish them for their ways that they behaved. Believing the old woman's tale to be nothing more than nonsensical children's stories, the voyager turned away and headed back to her camp. He remained in his mindset of the majority of the evening, but when the clock struck 11, his entire belief system was starting to be challenged. So she said, yeah, these are water gods. If you even mess with them a little bit, they'll wipe out whole villages with these monster storms. And the Great Lake regions are known for, these giant storm systems. So she was like, she was more trying to save her own skin and everybody else's skin by getting them not to shoot at the thing.
Yeah, because then we're all in trouble.
Not even just this party, this whole coastline.
Yeah.
I'm taking a drink.
It's always good to take a drink every now and then. So, because these are the type of stories that, another spin's coming soon.
Oh yeah, no, it gets good. It gets good. He tries to seduce the mermaid. Just a little. So it was said by Saint Germain and recorded by the two other judges and later that night, a storm of terrific proportions enveloped in the island's camp and assaulted them with violent winds and dangerous waves for 3 solid days. The lake would appear to think of itself and seemingly recognize where the voyagers were holding up. Slowly rising higher as it crept forward, for 5 members of the team had no choice but to huddle together for safety in the middle of the island at its highest point. The old woman, who admittedly believed that Saint Germain was responsible for the situation at hand, told the men that due to the actions of one, the god of the water was punishing them all. It would not stop until every person had been dashed to pieces upon the rocks surrounding the island. But fortunately for them all, the storm broke after the gargling. Fortunately for them all, the storm had broke after 72 hours and gave way to clear skies, allowing them to leave the island and continue their journey. So this old lady was fully trying to get them to kill Saint Germain. She was kind of nudging everybody, being like, "Hey, the storm's only really mad at one of us. The storm's like not mad at us all. We just all happen to be on the island
Couldn't
together.
you just get like a little baby storm and
Like
just
maybe if somebody pushed him outside, the storm would be happy, and we got all leave." And those other guys are sitting there for a second thinking like,
not a bad
maybe this old lady's right.
not a bad idea.
And Saint Germain was definitely holding onto that rifle. So, when asked by the judges whether he believed the storms and his party had encountered was truly that of the work of the mermen, Saint Germain stated that while in that evening was strange, it is unlikely anything that he encountered before. It was unlike anything he had encountered before. So the storm was of a level he had never seen, and he'd been in this area fur trapping for years. He said, not fully believing without a doubt that it was the work of the mythical god of water. So he completely changed his tune. He 100% believes it. The reason he gave is that while they were not personally encountered the storm of that exact size and fury while on the lake itself until that point, he had heard of many other voyagers who have dealt with these identical storms like that one. So it was well known within the ability of nature to produce such events. He also recognized that the fact of these prior and any large storms which occurred on the lake, fish have been a tendency to gather in large groups near the surface and are known to jump more frequently to show themselves in the water. Whether or not any large yet common fish were responsible for taking on the appearance of the merman as prior to the storm, Saint Germain was not able to accurately say. But he was also not able to rule out the possibility. So he's kind of going, he's trying to play devil's advocate up here so he doesn't, probably get hung, saying that while he's never experienced a storm like this and he feels it may have been the work of the mermaid, he knows other people that have experienced the same storm, the same size storms, and giant fish in the Great Lakes are known to become much more active. But keep in mind, in his original story, he said that he sat above the water for 4 or 5 minutes, had giant long monkey arms with a big human hand and a human face.
Yeah.
So for 30 years, Saint Germain not only lived with the memory of what he saw that night on the lake in 1782, but he also wrestled with his own beliefs, whether or not what he's seen was actually a merman. The rationally grounded and well-seasoned woodsman understood what had occurred that night may have been nothing more than a series of coincidences, and they were enhanced by the old woman's stories. The other side of him thought, though, that the one he had personally seen a visit unexplained to the things of the water over the course of his many years could not so easily claim that he saw was not a mermaid, or merman, sorry. This possibility grew even stronger after he met other fur traders in the area who had all claimed to see the same creature. They said it was a common sight on Pie Island to see this creature, and it was common knowledge to turn away and walk away.
So it was like one creature, like from what everybody thought, at least. Like they,
Yeah,
they
at
were
least
seeing
this
the same-
one individual was calling Pie Island home.
Gotcha.
So where all the voyagers experiencing the exact same shared delusion in different locations, or maybe, just maybe, were there a little bit of the truth to these old stories. So I'll continue, but that's a good one, Sean. While seeing the mer beings would make for an interesting chapter in anyone's life story, the universe may not yet be done with the placing Saint Germain's into interesting situations. In 1821, roughly 39 years after seeing the merman, only 9 years after telling the story before the judges of Saint Germain, found himself in Fort Panapee, a fur trading post owned by the Northwest Company, which he is said to be the first fur trading post in North Dakota and was located just below present-day United States-Canadian border. According to the story, Saint Germain was preparing to leave the fort, but he realized he had forgotten something. Believing that he knew where it was, the man ventured back inside and started looking into what was known as Indian Hall. At the same time, the fellow fur trader and a friend of Saint Germain by the name of Joseph Rainville arrived at the trading post and ventured inside. As Rainville entered the door, Saint Germain was descending down the stairs with what he had forgotten object in the hand. Upon seeing one another, they exchanged pleasantries. Rainville said in a joking way, "What would you say if I were to bring you the carcass down like a bear?" Knowing that his friend was a terrible shot, Saint Germain responded in a way to believe in his similar classic, "I'd like to see you try." Basically, he's like saying, "What if I tried to shoot you like a bear? I'd like to see you try." Not one to let a good, friendly jab go without another, Rainville grabbed his own weapon off the wall and left it in the scene of previous winter. Took aim and continued to make jokes towards his friend. So his friend's coming down. So Saint Germain's coming down the stairs. Rainville's like, "Hey, you old fool, what if I try to shoot you like a bear?" And Saint Germain's like, "You could try. You're a horrible shot."
Yeah, you're
Rainville
Oswald.
grabs the gun off the mantle and points it at Saint Germain.
Like, how close are they? Like, is this
They're in a room together.
So it's like it doesn't probably tell you, but let's say maybe like a living room.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say a large living room.
Okay.
They're within 20 feet of each other easily.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just, I told you this is a good story.
Oh, it really is. It's detailed too, man. Like they really.
Adam Benedict does great work. I cannot sing his praise high enough. So As the two men laughed, Rainville jokingly pulled the trigger of the old weapon, and to his astonishment, he heard the gun go off.
Bang.
In shock, Rainville looked up and saw Saint Germain slumped back against the wall, blood pouring out from beneath his clothes. Rainville ran towards the staircase, and upon reaching his friend, he heard him calmly and composed respond, "You have killed me, my friend." The bullet, jokingly fired from the gun from a friend, had entered through the left side below the ribcage and exited the body through the right side under the arm. 4 hours later, Saint Germain had died.
And
this gun was like an
kind of sound like
antique.
a Midwest thing, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a way to die in North Dakota.
Yeah.
I think they have at least 9 deaths like this a year in North Dakota.
Easy.
Ever since the encounter between Saint Germain and the merman took over 238 years ago, there had been a steadily stream of strange sightings filtering out of Lake Superior. But all 5 of the Great Lakes, chilling reports of unexplained creatures, strange weather patterns, haunting phenomena, odd lights, and sounds have been recorded and experienced by sailors out on the open and vast inland sea. Even those who only use the lake for recreational are often reporting encountering strange and unusual things that appear just below the surface. After these strange encounters, nothing more than an illusion created by our minds, or is there something waiting just out of view in the murky water? Or are these tales of bizarre and mysterious merfolks, as many of these reliable individuals and trustworthy witnesses are truly occurring in our Great Lakes? Yeah, how'd you like it?
I think that it made me question a lot of things. Like, it made me think more than just mermen or mermaids. It made me think of something different, like that this creature may be something else completely.
So I got my list for you, and we'll go over them, and I'll see what you think
Okay.
of what this could be. Everything from biologic to more mythical. Flat out, first one is what is considered a classical merman or mermaid or merfolk. What do you think about that?
Now, we're not saying, are we trying to figure out if there is just that, or can we say that there could be a combined of some of these things? Because, like,
Whatever.
I'd say, because I think there's some possibility of the mermen and mermaids being in that area for sure.
I do think, I'm talking specifically about this encounter.
Okay, then I'm going to say I don't think it's a merman, no.
I'm right there with you. The hairy body, the black skin, the African-American hair, the long arms with the giant hands, and the wide mouth doesn't scream mermaid to me. And he never seen the lower half.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that is remotely merman is it was standing in what it appeared to be, waist-deep water. But everything can go in the water.
Yeah.
I've seen buffalo swimming.
Yeah, that's a fact. Anything could go in the water. And if it's able to swim, definitely the description does not sound whatsoever. I think the only reason the assumption was like merman was because they're in the water.
Exactly. I think you're right. I think it's right there. So, my next one for you, and this is one that I think you've probably already got to. Bigfoot. He's seen a small Bigfoot. This Bigfoot, are known to be good swimmers, was out there, the long arms with giant hands, the childlike features, because only about 4 to 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
But the extremely long arms, the short hair, but wool-like hair, the blackish, brownish skin, everything about this to me kind of screams a juvenile Bigfoot. And what do we know about juvenile Bigfoots is that what appears to be one of their defense mechanisms is they freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they get in, and they're in the open and stuff. So these shallow water bars around Pie Island are famous for mussel beds. So it's a big food source that he could have been openly trying to harvest. And this guy with a gun comes around the corner, and what do? You're like, don't shoot. Please, white man.
And they already kind of know what they are. And then I could see the correlation. And I did think that at first, too, like, it made a lot of sense because it was like, okay, Bigfoot, the hairy, the features looking so grim, almost like, the first man. What do they say? The missing link. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How did they try to say that?
So the nose was a good one for me. It appears to be almost. I kind of tried to look up how they were describing it, and it kind of almost seemed like a gorilla to me.
Yeah.
Is,
Or
you know, this-
orangutan, kind of like that's what.
Yeah, it's very wide, but it's not very long. Like our noses, they stick off our faces, but it's still prominent, but not long. The big hands on the long, thin arms. You know, from all of our eyewitness accounts that I personally believe that have seen juvenile Sasquatch, they are kind of like these long, thin, lanky apes. You know, probably until they get to their teenage years when they start putting on bulk. You know, that's what a lot of animals do. They get their frames built out first, and then they start putting on bulk.
Because even when you look at like baby moose, you know what I mean? Like, same thing.
Or buffalo, or any cows. You know, any of these big, bulky animals, they get big, they get lanky first, and then they start putting on that mass. So, what do you think about that one?
I think there's let me put a 25% on that one.
25%. Okay. I have a magical one for you. The Fae folk.
Okay.
So the Fae folk here in North America take many shapes and forms. So is this a forest Fae folk that happened to be caught off guard? The magical powers of nature would kind of lead to this if anybody at home wants to believe that the storm was directly related. So I may have misread it or maybe not read it the best. The judges looked back on that on that day, and there was a massive storm recorded on that day. So the storm was documented on the day he said it happened. So at least we know that that is factual. That that area had a massive storm that day. So the Fae folk would be a good point to this. They're also known as the little people here in North America. And he shot at one of them, or was going to shoot at one of them. He did shoot a round out, but he missed. Hopefully he missed. I think if he wouldn't have missed, he'd be dead. Especially the northern Fae folk are known to take grudges, like the Nez Rouge that are in Detroit is held like a 300-year grudge over people. So what's your Fae folk thoughts?
Well, that's funny you say that the Nez Rouge is what I was kind of like going to compare it to into like the Fae folk. I'm going to have to put like a good 85% on that one because the controlling of the weather, the when they say that they're gods, a lot of people like mistake Fae folk as like angels or like godlike creatures. I got to get a strong 85 for that for me.
85. Now, here's one that may throw you for a loop you may never thought of for this. We're actually seeing a lizard person coming out of the water.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a good one. The one I thought was, what if it was a shapeshifter?
Now, I could see that. The Native Americans have a lot of legends of that. The Fae folk or spirits kind of, could kind of fit into that too.
Yeah, that's why when you said Fae, I was like, Fae folk for sure.
It's
so that
yeah.
is in that same realm, that same toolbox.
So for lizard people, they're known to inhabit these lakes and waters around the world. And I'm talking more of not reptilians as in, the ones running the government, more of the bipedal lizards that try to eat everything.
The ones that are all right, they just try to eat you.
Yeah, they're more wild. They don't have any big conspiracy. They just want to eat your dog. So the Charles Mill Lake monster was a lizard person here in Ohio, and it was first thought to be a Bigfoot because it came out and it was covered in aquatic vegetation. It looked like it had fur because it's called raccoon tail or coon tail reeds, and they look like fur. And it was all wrapped up in that. And when it came up, they're like, it's a big, and then it started sloshing off. I'm like, oh, that's much worse.
Yeah, much worse.
And then they ran. So that's just one I thought of to throw in there to be like, maybe it's a lizard person that's all covered in fur.
I kind of like that one only because sometimes eyewitnesses are not that they're lying, but when you're describing something and you're seeing something for the first time, I'm going to still lean the highest percentage with the Fae folk, but I'm going to give that one a little bit like a good 35-40% because I know that people misjudge things sometimes. If they see it with all this sludge all over the chest, like whether it be reefs or like, swamp stuff that looks kind of, maybe it's not hair, maybe it's not dark, but it's weird lighting. But the only thing that leads me a little bit more to the Fae folk is just the whole controlling of the weather.
And then you just made a really good comment too, is that keep in mind, everybody at home, this is right before sunset. This is the poorest lighting of the day.
Yeah.
And so he's describing this in great detail, being almost an acre away, which for everybody, that's like 40-ish yards, depending on where you're from. It's about 40-ish yards a square acre. And then describing it, so 40 yards away, in the dark, in the water, not dark, in the dusk, in the water, with all this great detail was something I kind of questioned. That I do think he had a real encounter, but some of the really high-end detail may be in either his own mind or the story started to grow when he was telling it, which does happen a lot with these things. So my next one is, have you ever heard of a stellar sea ape?
No.
So a stellar sea ape, the stellar voyage, stellar described a lot of, in Alaska and the Canadian coast, he's a biologist in the 1700s that described a whole lot of new marine life for the Pacific Ocean. They took the long way around. And he was the one that actually found the stellar sea cow before they ate them all and they went extinct, which is the biggest manatee ever. You know, it was a whale-sized manatee, 40 to 50 feet long.
A whale-sized manatee?
Yeah.
Wow.
40 to 50 feet long, right around 40 to 50,000 pounds. Or 40 to 50 tons, I'm sorry. It's almost 100,000 pounds.
Jeez.
And we ate them all because they tasted like horse. Everybody said they tasted like horse.
They look
they were easy
crazy,
to kill,
man. Like I'm looking at some
stellar
pictures
sea apes
of
or
them.
stellar sea cows?
I got stellar sea apes.
Yeah. So he described, so keep in mind, this is a naturalist
Okay.
in his naturalist journal describing all these animals that we know exist. And in the middle of it was the stellar sea ape. And he didn't ever make no comment of it, no mention of it, anything weird. He just was, as he was going through his nature, describing all these species he was finding, it was right dead smack in the middle. And he said it was very similar to that of a baboon at the top half. It had long arms. It had what appeared to be a human monkey-ish face, short brown fur, a black face. Any skin that was exposed was black, but a very seal-like hind end. So not quite fish, but he said very seal-like. And he said it must be some kind of aquatic ape. You know, he was very, this is a high-end naturalist and stuff like that, so he's very much on this. And what's really points out to me is nobody knew he found this thing for years. Like, he didn't come back saying, I found an aquatic ape. He turned in his journals to the museums and just, here's all the species that I documented. Here you go. And it was just in the mix with everything else, from all the starfish to the sea cow to the stellar sea eagle. Like, a lot of the stuff's called the stellar sea eagle, the stellar sea cow, the stellar sea stars, because he's the one that described them officially. So all these animals were well documented on the next voyages. So this is one that I think may be a possibility, that if there was a fishy part of this, and not fishy, but this marine ape theory, and this has come along a lot with mermaids in the past, with all these other mermaids, is the aquatic ape theory, specifically dealing with humans and merfolk that are very much human-related. They think that if you want to believe in classical evolution, that we developed our upright posture from starting to hunt in tidal areas, because it's easier to hunt like a bird and to gather food. And they think that if you believe in this classical evolution theory, that's what actually helps us develop bigger brains, is the amino acid found in sea life. It's much better for mammals than the amino acids found in traditional meats on land. So what if humans on that step took one step further? So there's this tribe in the Pacific Ocean that they actually have the densest bones of any human race on the planet, because they've been doing this so long. They don't have any land where they're from. All their houses are on stilts. They have no land. But what they do is they sink, and the young kids got to put rocks in their pockets because they're not big enough yet. But the adult men don't have to do it. And they walk along the ocean and they hunt with spear guns and they hunt with spears. And that's how they get their food. We're watching a whole nother human race develop, becoming a whole different thing, or in the processes of doing this. So what if this thing was one that did it 100,000 years ago?
Yeah, no.
200,000 years ago. That it was just popped in. It's been this thing. They're very rare, I think, if they are still around in any measurable means. They're very rare. And what if he's seen a stellar sea ape What do you think?
That's a good one because it makes sense. And when you're talking about those people that are living on stilts, it kind of reminded me of Kevin Costner in Waterworld. You know,
Very much.
You know what I mean? And if something hundreds of years ago, you know what I mean, like thousands of years ago, really, like it could be. I think that's very logical because when by the time they saw, I know it's 100 years ago from us to this story, but before that, they would have like made the transition. And there's got to be other kinds of animals too, right? There's tons of stuff that has gone extinct. I got to say, I'll give that a 50%. There's got to be a good 50% chance of that being two.
Now, that's probably my second highest rated one for me personally.
Yeah, I would say
This last one, I gotta warn you, here's where the rain comes down. He may have just seen a fur seal.
Oh.
So fur seals get 5 to 6 feet long. They'll actually pull their head into their fat, and they'll look very human-esque. They have big eyes. They have a short, flat nose. Their fur around their face can be commonly black, brownish, and their hair can be everywhere from red to white to black to brown. And when their hair is dry, like if they sit out of the water for a minute and it dries out, it actually turns fuzzy and looks almost like wool or very curly hair. And when it's wet, it's very sleek and it almost looks like a fish skin. They're very extremely curious animals, but they were also been a long time staple for the Native Americans. So they're curious but fearful of humans. They're one of the favorite seals in zoos because once they trust you, they get really goofy and stuff like that. But at this time, they were still being hunted for food. They are not native to the Great Lakes region, but they have been found in the Great Lakes regions before and after. So if this woodsman had never seen a fur seal, had probably never seen a seal in his life, gets out there on Pie Island, and it's dark, it's dusk, and he looks out, and he sees this thing staring at him with these giant eyes, and it kind of looks like a man, and it's just kind of sitting in shallow water, popped up. And once again, they'd be in this shallow water feeding. You know, these are mussel beds and stuff like that, a lot of food. And he freaks out, and he's going to shoot it. This old Ojibwe woman runs up and beats the crap out of him, and then he beats the crap out of her, and then it's gone.
That's a little bit of popping up my bubble, I will say.
Now, I said fur seals are famous for ending up where they're not supposed to be. Fur seals and harbor seals are famous for ending up thousands of miles out of their range, ending up in super freshwater conditions. Fur seals get in Loch Ness every couple years. There'll be a bunch of them that get in there for some reason. They get a burr up their butt and climb over the dam for some unknown reason, you know. They end up in Russia. There's actually a population of freshwater fur seals in a lake in Russia that end up breaking away, and they just stop going back to the ocean.
And am I mistaken, but didn't in the story they describe something of a fin type hand?
Yes, and he said long, non-connected fingers.
Yeah.
Or a flipper.
Yeah, or a flipper.
We'll just go a flipper.
Oh, man.
So personally, if I had to rate him, I think number one, he's seen a fur seal or some other close seal species. A harbor seal would do as well. Or he's seen a stellar sea ape, which I think was a real cryptid. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest the stellar sea apes are real. I think for me personally, they're interchangeable with percentages. It could really be either or, because stellar sea apes were not seen in fresh water, even by it's just like harbor seal or fur seals aren't supposed to be in fresh water, but the Great Lakes do lead to the ocean. They can get there, and so it's just a matter of if one got a burr up its butt and found a place it liked. Now, Pie Island would be perfect habitat for either of them. On all of its sides has these long, shallow gravel beds, which fish come to spawn on. So there's a lot of fish eggs to eat. There's a lot of breeding fish to eat, and there's giant mussel beds. So mussels are easy prey. They don't generally fight back too hard if you can open their shells. So whether it's a Bigfoot or a stellar sea ape or a fur seal, I think it was there because of the food. I personally don't think the storm had anything to really do with it. I think that was probably a coincidence because it's known for storms in that region. Like he was saying, like it's not a storm isn't uncommon, especially that time of year in the Great Lakes region. It's just kind of like saying, it's going to rain in the Amazon. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, Midwest weather in general is it could be once in the morning raining, sunny in the afternoon, snowing by the evening. We do not know.
So, what do you think?
Man, I think that the furry seal seems the most logical. It seems very, very likely that may be. But I'm going to have to say the fae folk because I want to be a little bit, I want to have a little lure to my life, but I would probably like really rate it the same way you did. The furry seals, the stellar sea ape, and then the fae, unfortunately.
So I'm going fur seal, stellar sea ape, Bigfoot.
Ooh, I like that.
Because I do think the story does scream some parts about Bigfoot to me. But he also told it over 30 years after it happened. And think about how humans do stories. Is that every time you tell them, they get a little more grandiose. And a little more grandiose. And a little more grandiose. 30 years of this guy in the woods, and he gets in front of the king of courts.
Yeah.
And 2 judges. He's for sure put on a show. This thing gave me the middle finger.
Yeah.
This thing pulled out a phone book and a cell phone. I don't even know what a cell phone is. But it was like, look at this. And then I tried to shoot it, and then a laser beam came over his eyes, and then it flew away.
Well, and looking at a picture of a furry seal, like, and it's kind of like this, it would look like a human.
They look like people.
Yeah, and in water, you'd think that this was a human torso, and their faces, especially some of them, have them like a little bit mushed in, you know what I mean? And the nose is like that. From a distance of 40 yards in dusk in the evening.
Right, that's the other thing. Is that, it's a distance away at dusk. That was my big red flag for this whole story, is how much detail he had at 40 yards. I was like 20 feet from my Bigfoot, and I didn't have this much detail.
Yeah, that's a lot of detail. And then that's from saying it over time, though, with people, like you said, like rehearsing the story, not intentionally, but just...
It just happens. It's human nature. It's human nature. Nobody's doing it on purpose.
I do like the Bigfoot, especially adolescent Bigfoot, because they're so lengthy. Like we were talking about, like they just have like a giraffe, like young giraffe. They're just so lengthy.
They look goofy.
They're goofy a little bit, like, and they're mischievous. And then when they do get caught, they act like kids and they get scared and freeze. That made sense, but also a fur seal would also maybe freeze as well. Now, the thing I do got to say is the sea ape. I like that one a lot because I think that it gives like the lure of like, Nessie and things of that nature, so that I could see it happening. But I think it would be bigger, right? I don't know. I think it would look, even from 40 yards away, I think it would seem, from what I was just looking at, I'm not an expert on this, but I would think it would seem bigger than just like what he saw. The sea ape? Yeah, the sea ape.
So I remember Taylor's original journal said it was only like 4 or 5 foot long.
Okay.
So he said it was like a small person.
That is real possible, man.
But I don't know. I don't think there's, besides the lizard people, I don't think there's really a bad one on this list.
The lizard person was fun
to throw you off.
I liked it.
So I think we may, I don't know if we figured this one out, but I think we got some good possibilities out there for a 240-year-old mystery.
Yeah, definitely.
But this was a fun one because there's a lot of what I love, and you know this, what I love about these old, like any story I can get my teeth into for research that has paper trails, that has documentation. I can literally, this court record still exists. The weather record still exists. Like, all this stuff is tangible, and you can look at it. And, we've done it with some of our Bigfoot stories we've covered in the past, and you've covered some of the sea monsters and stuff like that, to where it's tangible. You can look at the actual newspaper articles. You can look at, and they talked about them like it happened. Not that they're talking like now with Bigfoot and aliens and stuff in the news. It was more like, so like me and you have talked about in the past on this show, is like the Ohio horned serpents were reported as almost landmarks, a group of 3 Ohio horned serpents were seen on the cargo shipping lane. Watch out, this week coming up. Don't they block traffic. They were like big eels.
It was like the construction cones. They're like, hey man, don't worry, just go around them.
But it's crazy to think about. And I brought it up to some Serpents Mound crews that I think it's an Ohio horned serpent, and nobody wants it. Nobody wants to believe it that it's an Ohio horned serpent. But I don't think they just get an Ohio horned serpent was 100 feet long and had 3 big horns on its head, and was probably the scariest, peaceful, but most powerful animal to ever live in Ohio, at least since the Jurassic.
Easily.
And it's So why wouldn't you make a big monument to it? Especially because it's right there on the Ohio River where they were being seen. You imagine seeing a 100-foot long eel with a rhino head.
Well,
and just being like,
after that Palestine incident, we may see some of those.
I think they washed up on shore after the Palestine incident. They just died.
They didn't create no mutants.
No, I don't think they lived long enough to create mutants. You gotta survive the initial chemical burst.
That's right. That's true.
All right. Well, you know how we like to end it. On the count of 3, we're gonna scream bye, and the outro will play. You ready?
Yes, sir.
3, 2, 1.
Bye.
Bye.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
Who knows? Anything's possible.
But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Mothman.
A great white shark was stolen.
Someone stole a shark?
It's amazingly safe from the weather. I got stuff for you don't even know about. It sounds like you were abducted. There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. Seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree. It's really big abduction vibes.
Holy moly.
She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just like kept going and going. And she goes, what the